Welcome to I'll Marry You, a podcast with me, Olivia Coleman, full of tips and tricks from the UK wedding scene, interviews with industry experts, and a whole lot of oversharing. Good morning, good morning. It's probably the afternoon already. I'm holding the microphone because he's pissing me off. I've got quite a lot of anger today, you know. Don't know what that's about. It's not hormonal. It could be the lack of sleep. It could be the fact that I have not slept for more than 2 hours straight in over 3 months. And really, I haven't slept well in, I would say, 10 to 12 months. And that really can take its toll on a person. Hiya, guys. How are you? I hope you enjoyed the last 2 weeks' episodes, the interview with an expert with Charlotte from Perfect Cakes, because I bloody have. I think they were really good. She was brilliant content, that one. And we've got loads more interviews as well. But they've been just coming into the DMs, haven't they? All these gorgeous, amazing, wonderfully talented industry pros wanting to be interviewed on my little old podcast, which is nice. But I thought I would just break it up and bring you a story time because we haven't done that in a while, have we? I'm also aware we haven't done an episode with Cousin Elle, and I will get on that, I promise. It's very hard because, you know, I'm a mother. I don't know if we've covered that. But I promise we will do that. But for today, I just wanted to I wanted to take you back. I wanted to take you back to October of 25 when a heavily pregnant, moderately miserable Olivia Coleman celebrant to the stars went to Mallorca, to Palma, Mallorca, for the most glorious wedding / baby moon. I just got a text message from one of my couples. Literally, all it says is just popped up on my phone. All it said is a question for you. What does one do if a supplier is ghosting them? Okay, I'm going to reply to you in a minute personally, but also I'm going to turn that into an RSVP at the end. So that just came in. So hold fire to the end of the episode, and I'll I'll tell you all about it. I'll give you all my advice. So at the end of October last year, I had a wedding abroad, just on the outskirts of Palma in Mallorca, and I booked this wedding before I found out I was up the duff. You know, up duff as they say up north. But as with all my weddings, actually, do you know what? I'm quite proud of this. Every single wedding that I booked before I was pregnant, even when I was pregnant, I kept. Even the wedding that was 2 weeks before my due date, I kept. And every wedding that I had booked for this year before I knew I was pregnant, I have kept. Okay, so actually, just before this podcast, even really we get into the body of it, I want to start off by saying that I'm impressed with myself. So that's good. That's something. So I had this Mallorca wedding. Gorge couple, George and Andy, Georgina, I suppose, George and Andy, just for context, to him and her. And they actually live really local to me, like literally like 20 minutes away and like 5 minutes from my in-laws. But by chance found me. And they booked it ages ago. But it just so happened that they were local. So we had like the planning meeting was in person, which was at their house, which is really nice because I got like a good sense of them and their vibe, you know. I was very excited, but I realized that it was going to be quite far into the pregnancy. So end of October, November, December. So I was 7.5 months pregnant. So I'd Googled, right? Okay, so I'd Googled right as soon as I found out I was pregnant, I'd Googled how far into your pregnancy can you fly? And it was fine by like 3 weeks. So I was like, sweet, okay. And I must have, you know, when you think something and you're like, did I check that? Did I not check that? I must have Googled that same question a dozen times because I just kept questioning myself. And I was like, no, it's fine. I can fly. I can fly. And George, bless her, the bride, quite quite a lot would be sending me messages throughout the month leading up to the big day. You know, how you feeling? How you feeling? How are you? How's your health? Everything okay? What I didn't tell her was that it was a very close call, actually, for me going out there. So once I realized I was pregnant, I told her and I was like, yeah, it's fine. I can still do it. I'm on it. I said to her, would you, I mean, I said, I asked her permission, I suppose, but actually, actually had nothing to do with her. But I said, I'm thinking I'll bring my husband because I will probably be a little bit nervous to fly that far into my pregnancy and just the stress of it all and the driving and the car parking and blah, blah, blah. And just being on my own, it's a bit shit. So she was like, yeah, of course, bring your husband. So obviously, mama here gets paid. Okay. He doesn't. So OCC paid for him, didn't he? Didn't I? Didn't I? I'm a sugar mama. I'm a sugar mama at this point. So that was always the plan, and I thought, let's extend it by a day or 2 and turn it into like a little baby moon. Leave Lola at home, although he wanted to bring her. Leave her at home and just enjoy a couple of days out in the sun, just with each other. And so that's what we did. So that was the plan. So we were very excited about it. And then about 6 weeks before the day, yet again, for the 13th time, I Googled how far into your pregnancy are you allowed to fly? And it said, up until like 3 or 4 weeks before, fine, brilliant. Okay, I've done it again. And then I was looking at my flights that I'd booked. And I don't know what possessed me on this one day to sort of double check, but I double checked with the airline. This is a life note for you all. I double checked with the airline, and the airline was different to sort of like the national suggestion of time. So I was allowed to fly with that specific airline by, I think it was 5 days. So 5 days after I got back to the UK later, I would not have been able to fly. So thank F, I double, triple, quadruple checked and checked with the airline. And then I also needed a fit to fly certificate. I am fit to fly. So that's like an official document, very serious stuff that has to be signed off by the midwife. So then then I'm starting to get a bit stressed, right? Like it's all coming up quite quickly. And I'd not health-wise, my pregnancy was fine. My mental health suffered quite a bit with it. Just because I don't like being pregnant, to be honest. And the restraints that it puts on you mentally, emotionally, physically, spiritually. So I went to get my fit to fly the day before we were due to fly. It had to be done. There was a certain window that it had to be done in. I think it's like 10 up to 10 days before you fly. But then it also has to be done like within 2 weeks of coming back. So if you go away for a long time during a pregnancy, then you have to get it done whilst you're abroad. But luckily, because I was only gone for 3 nights, it was fine. Anyway, so I had my appointment to get my fit to fly signed by the midwife the day before we were supposed to fly. So at this point, I couldn't say with absolute certainty that I was going to make the wedding. What a tit. And I stupidly told the bride that. So she kept messaging me. She was like, hi, hi. What time's your appointment? Oh, fun, relaxed. Everything okay? I was like, yeah, blah, blah, blah. Obviously, I messaged and pretended I didn't get the signing because that's funny, isn't it? Anyway, they signed me off. What I didn't tell her also that week that we were flying, I had an infection in my wisdom tooth. Now, when you're pregnant, they don't like you to take any other medicines, really, apart from paracetamol. An infection in your wisdom tooth is absolute effing agony. I've had one before, and I actually liken the pain to childbirth. It's a different kind of pain, but I would say it's the same level. It is horrendous. I was in agony. I hadn't slept for 3 days straight. Eventually, I had to book an emergency dental appointment, and they gave me antibiotics. And I spoke to my best friend, who's a doctor, and he was like, "May I take the ibuprofen? You're fine." It was incredibly stressful, and I was in a lot of pain, and I was having even less sleep. But I got my fit to fly because I went into the appointment. I was like, oh my God, I'm absolutely fine. I'm not in any pain or discomfort. My mental health has never been better. And I just feel like this would be a really fun, relaxing break? So I got my fit to fly, and I was like, I've told her that. That stressed my bride out enough. I'm not going to tell her I've got a tooth infection because that will really stress her out as well. So the day comes and we fly. We have to get up at 4 a.m. And you know that excitement that you have, even as an adult, where you're going on holiday and it doesn't matter that you have to wake up early in the morning, does it? And you get into the car and it's cold and it's dark. And then, you're really excited to go away and you're just chat, 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 chat. Do you know who doesn't chat, 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 chat? Is my husband. And when he does chat, 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 chat at 4 a.m., his chat is so poor. It is so weak. I can't even explain it to you. I mean, if I'm totally honest, I'm not with him for his chat. I've been with him 17 years. I'm with him because he's incredibly attractive, has the body of a rugby playing wrestler, and he's nice most of the time, personality wise. But it's not for his chat. I bring the chat. I always say to people, James is the nice one, I'm the funny one. Okay. I bring the banter. He does not. And he certainly does not bring it at 4 a.m. I can't even explain to you. I can't even remember. But it was just ridiculous. He is also a big fan of aeroplanes because he's a little bit of a loser. He's got that app, the Flight Radar app. So he kept checking that and was like, "Oh, if you look up there now to the left, that is the 0430 flight from Berlin." I don't give a shit. I couldn't care less, if I'm honest. That is just a rocket in the sky to me, friend. So the whole experience was incredibly exhausting. And also remember, not only is it actually a work trip, so I have to be sensible, I'm pregnant. So if I wasn't pregnant, I would have probably had a cocktail at 5 a.m. Do you know what I mean? But I couldn't, could I? Because people would judge. um, and then we get onto our plane and it's delayed. So from memory, because this was a while ago, we were delayed in the airport by like 2 hours, and then we were delayed on the plane for like 2 hours, and then it's a 3.5, 4 hour flight. The wedding wasn't that day, thank God, but it was still quite stressful. It was boring. It was a load of wank, if I'm honest. The whole getting there thing. The bride was already out there. The bride and groom and a couple of friends and family had gone out previously to make like a week of it. But I knew because a lot of the guests, like I say, were from the area, and I was flying from Bristol, and it was one of the only flights that week to Palma. I had suspected that some of the other passengers would be guests at the wedding, and they were because she messaged me, the bride from Mallorca, and was like, "Oh my God, I've just spoken to X, Y, and Z, and you've been delayed. What a nightmare." So then, obviously, the ears prick up, don't they? Because I'm now aware that there are people on this plane who are guests at the wedding, future crowd members, audience members, if you will, for the Olivia Coleman show. So then I'm like torn between being so uncomfortable and fat and sitting in this bloody seat for 17 days and also just walking up and down the aisle, just being like, "Oh my God, I'm a celebrant. Oh my God, George and Andy. Oh my God, weddings in Mallorca." And just seeing who spoke to me. Because at that point, I really needed someone else to speak to other than my husband and his weak chat. Which actually reminds me, off the top of my head, he was sat apart from me because I planned it that way. He was sat sort of to my right over the aisle and down one, and sat next to me in my three-way seat was a lovely young chap, quite attractive. He was there with his son, for heaven's sake, and his wife was up the aisle, so to speak. Um, and we were chatting away, and he had good chat. This one told this good chat. This one, I told him what I did, and he was like, "Oh, I've been engaged for years. Don't think I'll ever get married." Blah blah blah. So obviously, I married him off. In fact, if he isn't listening now, because he actually wrote down the name of the podcast on his phone whilst we were sat next to each other for 17 hours. So eventually, the plane takes off and we land, and it's very exciting. And I'd not been to Palma before. It's gorgeous, very expensive. I feel like there are lots of rich people in Palma. Went to pick up the car, couldn't find it, could we? Literally just walked around a car park for another hour. Probably some more quality chat from JC. Um, we got in the car, and then he did that thing that I don't know if it's just a my family thing or if everyone does it with a hire car. When you pick it up and you inspect the car, you inspect the shell, the body, the chassis, and you take pictures of any scratches because what you don't want is to then return it a week later for the company to be like, "Oh, you made that dent." No, I didn't. I have pictorial proof, you know. So obviously, I'm like now like gagging to just get out into the fresh air and just stand up and walk around for a bit. And he's taking pictures of the bloody car. Then he finally gets in the vehicle and he has to play some music. And the system is all in German. Well, I haven't spoken German in years, if at all. So that took another 10 minutes of him trying to work out, why do they do that? And also when they start driving, he's like started driving, but was still trying to work out the sound system. I'm like, that's dangerous. What are you doing? At this point, I really didn't like him. I was regretting my life choice, not just marrying him, but bringing him to Palma. Eventually, we got to our hotel, which was a very nice hotel, actually. Inexpensive because you know how cheap I am. But it was a really, really nice hotel on the seafront. And I suppose because it was the end of October, it was the end of their season. I think it was actually the last weekend that they were open. They upgraded us, didn't they? Olivia Coleman. I think that did its magic. So we got into the room and unpacked and things like that. And then we walked down to the seafront and we had a lovely lunch, which was really nice, actually. That was peaceful. Obviously, he was on his phone the entire time, but it was a wonderful. That was like, okay, we're here now. We're on holiday, so to speak, for today anyway. Um, and then that evening we went back to the hotel and we had a nap. I believe we made love. And then we had a nap, and then maybe I had a nap during. I can't remember exactly. I was pregnant. And then we went out for dinner at the seafront, which was gorgeous, and all the boats, and like I say, very rich, affluent area, but very, very lovely. And then the next day, we had a whole day to ourselves before the wedding the following day. So we decided to go into Palma, and we had a wander. Like moth to a flame, within moments of parking the car, I'd found the only H&M and Zara that Palma had to offer. Went straight in there, didn't we? And then sod's law, when you want something, you can't find it, can you? Can't find it. And then, you got loads of money, can't find it. And when you're poor, you want everything, don't you? So we had a wander. We went through the town, through the old bit, through the new bit. We stopped off and had some churros, churros. We were being very Spanish. And we were quite in love at that point, actually. We bought some cards and we had lunch. We were like, as in playing cards, we like to play rummy card games when we were on holiday. Because, we only make love twice, but we played rummy several times. Got stuck in some roadworks. That was another 20 minutes of trying to sort that out with him tossing about with the sat nav in German still. We were still speaking German to each other. And then on the way back from lunch, I saw a sign that said Magaluf. And I said to him, oh my God, it's Magaluf. It's Shagaloof, babe, Shagaloof. I thought that Shagaloof was somewhere else. I had registered that it was in Mallorca. And neither had he. So I was like, we've got to go and see Shagaloof. Now, for you Gen Z lot, I don't know if it's still a Gen Z thing, but for us millennials, I never did it actually myself. But Magaluf, it's actually called, known affectionately as Shagaloof, is where you would go when you're like 16, 17, 18, 19 for the quintessential package deal, like Ibiza Weekender style holiday with your mates, like proper Brits abroad, rough as arse, cheap drinks, cheap hotels, cheap STIs. That's where you go. You go to Shagaloof, like pub recs and holiday tours and things like that. And I'd never been. And so I was like, well, look, we're in the car. We've got nothing else to do. We've got no kids to, to tie us to tie us down. So we went into into Magaluf. I don't want to offend people. Well, maybe I do. Actually, do you know what I do? Yeah, if you're the kind of person, as an adult, that goes to Shagaloof on holiday, then yeah, you're not my person. I'm sorry. You're just not. It was out of season, so it was like a million times quieter than it would be in the summer. And yet still, it was a horrendous place to be. It was like, it was just so depressing. Every street it was all in British, literally. There were like, not only were the menus pictures in the restaurant, but there were the boards outside the restaurant. So you could, visualize your full English for €5. Every street was a nightclub, an Irish bar, an emergency dentist, an emergency doctor, and an apartment block where you get chlamydia as you register your name. Do you know what I mean? It is so rough. It's just so unpleasant. And we just walked around. We were like, what fresh hell is this? Who are these people? And it's not just a cost thing. You can go to some really nice places for little money. It's a life choice. Shagaloof is a life choice, and it is not one that I would choose. It is next level. But I am glad that I did it and we saw it. And we literally we like drove in and was like, oh, you know the type. I'm not going to be, well, I've already been a bitch, but You know the type of person, okay, that goes to Shagaloo, the type of woman who's very tan because she's not only fake tans, sunbeds, but she also goes away a lot. And she'll wear like a black vest top with a white bra strap showing. Do you know what I mean, don't you? You know what I mean. Like a bright lip, you know? Bad hair extensions, smoking fags, drinking pints. Am I painting a picture? I'm so sorry. I feel like maybe this episode is the one where I'm cancelled. Who knows? So we did that, and that was a real experience. Got back to the hotel, had another nap, didn't we? Did not make love. That was the first and last time. Weirdly, I remember Harry Potter was playing. There was a Harry Potter marathon playing on the only British channel in the hotel room. And so actually we watched the entire Harry Potter movie franchise while we were there. Very strange. But how nice, like in life anyway, but also once you have kids, and especially once you're about to add a second, to just be able to chill with your partner. Like we sat by the pool, we chatted, we napped, we cuddled. Yeah, no, it was lovely. I'm glad I took him. Um, we had a fancy dinner that night, and I thought, "Do you know what? I'm going to treat myself. I'm going to have a glass of fizz or a glass of red. I'm going to have a glass of something. You know, at this point in my pregnancy, a glass is fine. Okay, don't come at me, Karens. I know that for a fact. I've spoken to doctors about it. Okay, everything in moderation. So I was like, I'm going to treat myself. 7.5 months pregnant. I'm going to have a glass of fizz. And I got there, and the waiter, it was such a fancy restaurant, and the staff was so brilliant, and the service was exceptional that within seconds, the waiter was like, "What can I get you to drink?" "Oh, we've got 0% gin, 0% rum, 0% beer, 0% wine." Well, the little bugger, it went on and on for so long. I thought, I can't have an alcoholic drink now, can I? He's just listed everything on the bloody drinks menu, and now he'll judge me. So I had to go, "I'd like a 0% gin, please." I missed out on my opportunity. So so I had that, and we had a gorgeous meal. Went back to the hotel bar where they had evening entertainment. Don't you love that? They were ABBA, weren't they? ABBA tribute act. JC got a lap dance, didn't he? Not from me. That that heavily pregnant, that would have been a serious lap dance. He got a lap dance from one of the blokes. I think it was to Gimme Gimme Gimme. God, that was funny. And then the next day was the wedding. So it's only taken me 23 minutes and 48 seconds to get to the actual wedding. It was big. You love my abroad wedding story times. Don't pretend like you don't. So the next day was the wedding. Um, and I was so excited because I knew that it had been meticulously planned, even though they did have a wedding planner, which does make such a difference. But I knew that George, the bride, had been really invested in it. And I'd got to know them. I know all my couples well, but I'd got to know them particularly well. And I was so excited for it. And so it was going to be later on in the afternoon. Now, from memory, I believe the ceremony was at sort of 4 o'clock. Quite often they are when they're abroad because otherwise it's just too hot. It had been pissing down with rain that night, but luckily, thank God, the wedding gods, the weather was glorious on the day of the wedding, but also not too hot. End of October. Very clever. If they'd chosen June, July, August, you'd be fucked. Do you know what I mean? So we just sort of chilled that day at the hotel, went on the beach and whatnot, willy-nilly, you know. And then I spent ages getting ready in the hotel, which was lovely. Shaved my legs, didn't I? Shaved my legs. It was in a finca, which is, I suppose, the Spanish word, like the French would have a chateau. What would we have? A stately home. And the Spanish have a finca, which ironically is the name of the dog belongs to the bride and groom. So they had a finca, and they had a great wedding planner and the team. I will list all the suppliers, and I'll put all the suppliers on my socials because it was a fab team. That from what I believe, I think I'm right in saying that I was the only supplier that they shipped out, that they bought over. And that did make me feel a lot of pressure. It did. Because they didn't know, when they booked me, they didn't know that I was as local as I am to them. And so it wasn't like they weren't doing me a favor. It was expensive. It is expensive to ship out a supplier to an abroad wedding. And even though I am cheap, and so I always try and book a hotel that's the cheapest, and we looked at the flights that were the cheapest, and I do try and do it as inexpensively as possible because I'm aware that it is an expensive thing to do. I felt a lot of extra pressure knowing that they shipped me out, and then everyone knew that I'd been shipped out. So it was like, oh, what's so special about this one? This fatty. I'm not fat. I'm with child. So all throughout the day, I was texting the bride and just like checking in. Like, oh my God, how are you feeling? How's it going? Blah, blah, blah. They had arranged activities the day before for everyone. They'd arranged activities that day for everyone. As a couple, they'd really put a lot of thought into the guest experience, which I do think, I've said this before with abroad weddings especially, I think that's really important because that matters. That matters hugely. When people have made the effort and expense to come out to a different country to celebrate your wedding, it's important that they feel special. And also for this particular bride and groom, they had made a point of saying to me that it was a lot of the idea of the wedding was for their friends. Like they are completely indebted to their friends and the friendships they have and their family. And this was kind of their way of thanking them for all the years of friendship and the support and the love and all that jazz, which I think is really sweet. I'm far too selfish for that nonsense. So the venue was gorgeous in the middle of nowhere, and the flowers were stunning, bright pinks and oranges. And the team were brilliant, the photographer, the videographer. The ceremony went really well. I wore a lovely blue dress, since you asked, which weirdly went perfectly with the venue. It like matched the curtain matches the drapes. That's not the phrase. The dress matched the windows. Oh. And then they had cocktail hour, and I had a lovely chat with his dad because the bride and groom had been together so long, and so everyone knew everyone. And then I had great chats with some of the other guests because they were like just chatting to me anyway as the celebrant. And then they were like, "Oh, where do you live?" And I was like, "Oh, I live in, I'm in Trowbridge. I'm like 20 minutes from you guys. You're Laycock. That's where my in-laws are." Chit-chatting away. Half the guests knew people that I knew. It was so, I didn't want to leave. It was so lovely. But JC'd gone for a round of golf, hadn't he? So he'd finished and he was in the car park waiting for me. It was such a really, really special day. Really special day. It looked beautiful. I will post the video and some photos for you because it really did look like exquisite. And not an obvious aesthetic, I don't think, for an abroad wedding. But it was just gorgeous, and they were gorgeous, and the ceremony went really well, and I was really, really pleased. The baby did not appear at any point. I was, of course, nervous of my waters breaking mid-ceremony amidst the thinker. We didn't want a winker in the thinker, did we? Don't even know what that means. It was gorgeous, and I'm totally thrilled and pleased as punch that I could do it. So, RSVP, that message I just got from my bride, let's call her T. T, if you're listening, I will get back to you ASAP because you have just messaged me that. What do you do if a supplier is ghosting you? Their wedding is in May. So it's not long a wait. Okay. Depends on the supplier. Do some recon. Email them, phone them, send a carrier pigeon, knock on their front door if you have to, Instagram them. Give them some time. Like they might suddenly have had some bad news, or they might have been in an accident, God forbid, or I'm sure there is a perfectly plausible reason as to why they're not getting back to you. If it's been a day, chill out. But if it's been 3 weeks, and your wedding is coming up, that's stressful. Okay, I'm stressed. I'm stressed for you. I'm going to have to go now so I can actually apply to her. I have had this before and it is really stressful. And I've had it before with a couple afterwards with their photographer. They just ghosted them and they never got their photos. We still to this day don't know what the hell happened. Stressful. Okay, I'm gonna tell you what happened next week. I'm gonna keep you updated. I've got to go. I've got to sort this out. Oh my God. See you next Tuesday. Thank you so much for listening. It really does mean the world. If you find this podcast even remotely helpful or moderately entertaining, share with all your friends and family. You can DM me any questions, queries, if you want to share any stories on the podcast Instagram at I'll Marry You Podcast. Get in touch. I want to hear all your tall tales. See you soon.
I'll Marry You is a podcast by Olivia Coleman. The music is Mr. Sunnyface by Wayne Jones, and the show is produced and edited by Drew Toynbee.
hell is this?